Fun. Amy, good to see you again.
Oh, what a weekend we're having. Oh my God, how are you doing, Chuck?
I'm great. I got to wake up this morning and talk to Scotty Young. I got to sit around and watch you talk to Mr. Al Ewing. I just got to talk to Mr. John Campia. And now I'm very excited to sit back and watch you do a deep dive with the folks over at Marvel. So, Amy, I'm going to cut you loose.
Excellent.
Have fun. We'll see you in a little bit.
All right, I'm Amy Allen, and I am so excited to bring you this all-star panel for the Streets of Marvel. We'll bring them in. I'll give everybody the fancy intros now. We have one of my favorite artists of all time, also a writer. She excels at everything she does. We have Becky Cloonan here. Hi, how's it going?
Good. Hey, how you doing?
Can you tell us where broadly you're coming to us from? Don't narrow it down, but in the world.
Austin, Texas.
Ah,
we had our first cool day of the season yesterday, so that was kind of nice. I wore like a hoodie. It's good.
Excellent. Yeah. We also have Marvel star shared writer of I'm going to get into all the things that you all have done together and overlappingly. I'm amazed by the connections in this group. We have Ed Brisson with us today. Ideally joining us any second.
There we are. Okay.
Hey, sorry. How's it going, Ed?
It's going all right. It's going all right.
And what area of the world are you coming to us from?
I'm up in Halifax, Nova Scotia, Canada.
Excellent. What time is it there? Is it the same as?
No, it's 6:00 here right now, so we're an hour ahead of you guys.
Oh, fantastic. We also have Hawkeye author. I realized I prepped too many credits to fit into a sentence for everybody. Please come on and join us, Matthew Rosenberg. We have a lot to talk about.
Hi, everybody. My mic isn't working. My camera isn't working, it seems like. I don't know why.
You sound like yourself, so that's a good start.
I don't know. I'll try and work on that.
Sometimes StreamYards, you have to go back and tell it which source to grab.
Yeah, I was going to say, Matt, just go on and maybe log back out and then log back in.
Okay, I'll leave. This was really fun.
Honestly, this might be for the best, folks.
He's probably catfish anyway, so Mike's not
Matthew
working.
Rosenberg, if that is your real name. Finally, to complete the set, and a big warm welcome to the Marvel Universe proper, please, for Philip Kennedy Johnson, who's going to be with us. I decided to get fancy with the intros, and I didn't warn anyone I was doing that. Sorry. Hi!
Hey, good to see you again.
Nice to see you. How are you doing?
I'm awesome. How have you been?
I'm very good. I'm also, not to spoil my plans for this panel, but I'm very excited that at least half of you are big D&D nerds. Oh, yeah. So I plan to derail this panel immediately in that direction.
Sweet.
What area of the world are you coming to us from, Philip?
I'm in the Washington, D.C., Baltimore area.
Excellent. So you're actually nearly as close to this con as we could get.
Yeah, exactly. This is my home con. So, yeah.
I've actually never gotten to go. I've heard wonderful things about Baltimore.
Oh man, it's great. It's one of the more like creator-centric cons. It's not just a big thing with, signings and wrestlers and stuff. It's like a lot of comic-y stuff here. It's really terrific.
Becky and Ed, have you all been to regular Baltimore Comic-Con before?
Once years.
Surprisingly.
2013, I was there briefly for just like an afternoon, in and out.
It is very lovely that I get to talk to all of you from wherever you are and add a con I have always wanted to see and scratch off my list. So as silver linings go, I'm very glad that you all could join me today for this. And hopefully, Matt, as soon as the tech works out, I'm just going to keep an eye if there's messages. Personally, I know I would be happy to just have your voice if that's... but we'll find out. All right, we're here to talk about the Streets of Marvel. A lot of you have exciting upcoming work, stuff you're currently working on, but I'm just excited to talk comics. So if you could, please, I would love to know what for each of you, do you have a moment that you fell in love with Marvel or those characters? Ed, do you want to start?
I don't remember. Actually, for me, I think the first thing I fell in love with was Peter Porker, Spectacular Spider-Ham, when I was
Yes.
maybe about 7 or 8. My mom used to drag us to used bookstores and sort of drop us off in front of the 10-cent bin while she usually took at least 2 hours. So we'd blow our allowance buying comics, and Peter Porker was the first thing that I was drawn to, but very quickly afterwards it was Spider-Man, X-Men, Punisher, and Daredevil for me growing up. But as long as I can recall, I've been reading Marvel comics going back to, 7, 8 years old, maybe a little bit older. They're younger, sorry.
What a wonderful place to begin. And I especially like that. I love the broad range of what you can do in comics, and that we are here to talk about street level comics, but that Spider-Pig can be someone's way in. I love very, very much. Becky, was there a moment for you with the Marvel Universe?
Yes, my dad used to be a big Silver Surfer and Fantastic Four fan, and when I was maybe like 8 years old, he got me he got a Silver Surfer annual, and read it to me for a bedtime story, and I got like super engrossed at a very young age in like the Kree Skrull politics.
Yes.
I love Super Skrull. I was like a huge Nova fan and Mantis, so like I was drawing fan art of these characters at a very young age, and then it wasn't until like I think it was Jim Lee's X-Men #1 that I got like really into X-Men, and then of course from there it spiraled out to like Excalibur and like just it was a mess. And I've just loved Marvel ever since. I love it.
Oh, that's fantastic. Philip, what was your intro to the Marvel Universe?
Mine would have been also real young when my dad would always come home with these boxes of ripped up comics. That was kind of what I learned to read on. That's how I learned to love reading and how to read it all. And I had these big. It ended up getting divided into these big stacks, and there was like a DC stack and a little kid stack where it was basically the forerunners to DuckTales, stuff like Scrooge McDuck and Beagle Boys and all those old Gladstone comics.
Classics, yes.
Yeah, and then the Marvel stuff, and a lot of the Marvel stuff was Spider-Man team-ups. And through those team-ups, I would see Spider-Man teaming up with some rando, like some the A, B, or C lister of the week, and some of them were big name people I'd seen before, and other ones were people I'd never seen before. That's how I got to know Ghost Rider. That's how I met Doctor Strange, and like lots of cool stuff. Those books kind of introduced me not just to, hey, it's Matt Rosenberg.
Hey everybody, I'm back.
Those books introduced me not just to heroes that I'd never seen before, but also to villains I've never seen, like Super Skrull, like Becky mentioned, and Mephisto, and the characters that I'd never seen in the big Spider-Man books made their way into those Spider-Man team ups. So that was my first introduction, and there were a lot of other Marvel books in there too, but mostly those. And that's how I kind of got to know the Marvel pantheon and really sucked me in.
That's wonderful. Matt, welcome to the stream officially again. Would you tell us how you're doing and where, broadly speaking, you are coming to us from?
Yeah, I'm in New York City in my lovely apartment. This is the cleanest part of it, so this is where we're filming from. And what was the other question?
And where broadly, or New York City? That was, and how you're doing?
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm good. Yeah, I'm good. Yeah, now I'm good. That was a little hectic. Sorry about that.
No, we're glad you're here. And by the way, anybody watching right now, at the end of this panel, I am going to throw your questions at these folks. So please be starting to think of the things that you want to know. And when we get to that portion, they will be pulled on screen. This is Streets of Marvel Q&A panel, as our first comment says. And we... So we were just talking about the moments that people fell in love with Marvel. Becky got into the Kree Skrull War. Ed Brisson discovered Peter Porker Spider-Ham, and Phil Kennedy Johnson was into the team-ups and learning all of the various big names and weirdos of the Marvel Universe. Was there a moment where you fell in love with Marvel?
Yeah, I mean, for me, like, I have an older brother who was into comics when I was a kid, and he used to like all older brothers, he was like, you can't touch them, don't go near them. So that for me was like the best, and they were amazing. And as soon as he would go out, I would sneak into his room and read his comics. But for me, it was the X-Men reading or trying to read, learning how to read on the Dark Phoenix stuff, for me, that was like, I had no idea what was going on. It was just totally weird and strange. And like, there were so many characters and such weird ideas. And it was really like kind of intoxicating for me to like try and piece it together at a very small age. So that was my sort of like first experience with Marvel, was just sort of falling in love with comics and the world and the colors and the art and like the nonsense that is superhero comics.
That's wonderful. Intoxicating is such a good description of that feeling of first soaking into the whole world. Plus, I like the idea of you sounding out fire and life incarnate as a small child. So I would love to know, obviously, this has been a strange year. A lot of things are up in the air, but what is currently something you're working on that you're very excited about that you might want to share with us before we dive into the past? Matt, you want to go first?
Sure. Yeah. My first issue, co-writing Amazing Spider-Man, came out this week.
Congratulations! It was so good.
Thank you. I'm co-writing that with Nick Spencer, and you know, he's a monster, but it's been really fun and awesome, and I'm really appreciative that he let me come on board and help out. And you know, anytime you can write Spider-Man is like, I have like a tremendous love for the whole Marvel universe and all the characters and everything, but like there are certain characters that just carry weight beyond what is, you know, the regular weight of a Marvel character, and Spider-Man is one of those characters where you're just like, oh, it's a real heavy thing to get to do, and so I feel really lucky to do it.
Excellent. I will just throw out, Becky, if there's anything you particularly wanted to highlight. I'm not sure where we are with Dark Agnes. I love those first couple issues very much, but
Dark Agnes didn't make the it was one of the COVID, it got canceled in that whole mess of early 2020, so it's very sad about that. The whole series was written and it was a lot of fun, but unfortunately I think it was issue 2 came out in like February, and then issue 3, when you know all the distribution kind of petered out, and then
sure.
You know, unfortunately, I mean, I think that's it was one of the Robert E. Howard books, so I'm wondering if it's just like a licensed property. So it's like a licenses upon licenses.
Sure. There's just extra hoops, and all of the hoops are currently wonky everywhere in the world. So I can see how that could happen.
Yeah.
But I am excited to dig into some of your past work. And also, I will veer off of the topic of our panel to say we are all very excited about Wonder Woman.
That's the big thing. That was the big news. Unfortunately, I'm not doing any work from Marvel right now, but after, I was like really depressed after Dark Agnes, actually, like surprisingly. Just like an ego blow, you know, and like just see something that you're really excited about is not happening anymore. And then when DC was like, do you want to do this like Immortal Wonder Woman thing? I was like, and there's a 2-issue Midnighter story too, which is like super fun. So that's been like a really good time. Yeah. And I've been doing my own mini comic again. So I've been drawing more and more.
That is good news for all of us. Ed, we can get both volumes now of your Ghost Rider run, which I loved very much, are available in shops. Do you have anything that you're particularly excited about right now that you want the people to be looking out for?
I wish I in a similar situation to Becky, in that Ghost Rider, I think, got sort of screwed by COVID, and so that one is done now. And I left New Mutants after 13, so I'm in a weird position where everything I've worked on wrapped, but because of COVID pushing things back, everything I am working on has not been announced yet and is not out yet. So I'm toiling away in secret here on projects that will be out early next year. I have used the opportunity, though, to get back to doing some creator-owned work. So I've been trying to get a couple of creator-owned projects off the ground, and I've returned to a series called Murder Book, which is a crime, self-contained crime series that I was writing for a good long while. I've gotten back to that, and I'm sort of pumping those things out. So those should be available soon. But Marvel-wise, you're going to have to wait and see, I'm afraid.
But that's an exciting kind of wait and see. There's tantalizing things that we don't get to know about yet. Which
maybe for you guys, it's killing me not to talk about it.
And Philip, I have so much enjoyed your entry to the Marvel Universe proper with Empire, Captain America, and of course you're doing Marvel Zombies right now. Is there anything else that you're particularly excited about or that you would want to tease towards if you're in an edge situation?
Yes, I am excited, and I do have something I want to tease. So yeah, the things I've already written, the trade for Captain America Empire comes out soon. The final issue of Marvel Zombies Resurrection, which we're really excited about, also came out or is coming out on November 11th. And that process was so fun and went so well that we've been looking for other like-minded things to do. And Marvel has a really big announcement coming out very soon, and I don't want to blow that, but they did greenlight me to tease it. So I just want to let fans know that I'm going to be writing an all-new ongoing horror series for Marvel starting in February. It is a dream come true property that I've wanted to write since I first got into comics, and we found a perfect art team for it. And I wish I could say more, but yeah, big announcement coming this week. So look forward to that.
Oh, that's tremendously exciting. All right, so I am hearing horror, I'm hearing crime, and we are here to talk about the streets of Marvel from all those responses. So I'm just curious, because between you, most of you have written The Punisher, several of you have written for Ghost Rider in various capacities. What is a street level story? What does that mean to you? Ed, you want to take this one first?
Oh, I wanted to hear everyone else's answers. And
You can pass.
all that. For me, it's more like more human stakes, I think, with a lot of the street level stuff. So it's not, I think sometimes it's hard to care as much. Personally, when every single life is on the planet is in danger, I prefer sort of more personal stakes, the smaller stakes where it's a life perhaps in danger or a few, and I think that's something that draws me into the street level stuff. I just love grounding stuff. I love having people with their feet on the ground and really sort of limiting their ability to sort of deal with stuff, and I feel like you got to get more creative. If you have, I don't know, if you got Punisher battling a Super Skrull, say, you got to get much more creative on how you're going to solve that and tell that story.
Absolutely. Becky, what makes a street level story for you, or what appeals about it?
I think there's a certain nuance where you can hone in on a couple characters. You're not dealing with like a whole team. You don't have to deal with like team dynamics or like we were saying, like just the stakes aren't as high. I mean, they're high, but they're like not, you're not dealing with the fate of the universe. It's like the fate of the streets. So,
again, a scope question. Yeah,
it just seems like the ability to tell like a story that's more focused around a couple characters, and you can really like hone in and like squeeze the juice out of that.
Matt, what about you? What's a street level story, and why is it fun?
For me, like, I grew up in New York, and I always got a real kick out of it's fun to see, the Avengers off in space and the X-Men off in space and all that stuff, and I love that stuff. But for me, like, the key to Marvel, and one of the things I really love about it is the Stan Lee saying, "It's the world outside your window," and for me, it was like, a lot of the artists would draw places that I know and places I'd been and things I could see. And then when you add the fact that like a lot of the street level characters are not super powered or like more human than super powered, I think there's just a relatability to it that is really endearing and I've always been drawn to. When I was a kid, I thought the Punisher was so cool. I don't think he's so cool anymore, but I think he's a great character. But I just thought like, seeing even Spider-Man, who's obviously got superpowers, but like, where he goes to school, where he goes to work, all those things. That's what makes a really good street level book to me, is like the things that are more relatable. I think a lot of the more epic and cosmic stuff is more aspirational, whereas the street level stuff is more relatable.
And Philip, what is a great street level story for you, or what do you look for in one?
Yeah, I think everyone's been saying it really well. It's all about, personal stakes as opposed to cosmic stakes is kind of how I see it. And what Becky said too about being able to get into specific characters. Like if I were to make a video game analogy, I guess it would be like, I mean, Dark Souls is awesome, right? And it's a big, larger than life thing. But The Last of Us, to me, like the stakes are, well, I guess there's pretty big stakes in that one too. But on the face of it, it's all about this guy on a road trip with this teenage girl trying to keep her alive, or trying to keep each other alive, trying to save each other in emotional ways as well as in real life. And it's just when it's somebody that you've grown to really care about, like a specific character that really matters to you personally, that's such a bigger deal than saving faceless billions. So I guess that's what ground, like street level stories are for me. And even when you're doing a big cosmic story, it's super important to try to make it feel street level in a character kind of way. That's what we try to do with Marvel Zombies Resurrection, actually, because it's obviously end of the world stuff, but I really wanted to approach it more like The Road, like Cormac McCarthy's book, as opposed to Robert Rodriguez Grindhouse. I wanted to take it very seriously and make you really care about the characters, and make it feel small even when it's big. So that's street level.
Absolutely. And I think you've given a great description for why I will read every book about Wolverine protecting a different teenage girl on their adventure to wherever. It's a formula that will always hit for me.
Yeah, the most powerful Wolverine image I can think of is the a cover where he's running with a baby in his arms, and he's like his back's pumped full of arrows, and like it's all about that protecting that baby. I don't know. I thought that was a really powerful image.
That lone wolf and cub kind of aesthetic.
Totally.
Absolutely. Back to probably the more proper source there. But it's all shared ideas out in the universe, right? I'm actually curious, speaking of Wolverine, Matt, can you tease anything you've got going on for a beautiful looking new Wolverine kind of situation?
Yeah. The Wolverine, I want to get the name right. Black, White, and Blood, I believe is what it's called, is coming out, and it's really fun. It's a black and white and red comic, and it's all, every issue is 3 10-page like Wolverine stories that they told us, just go send them whenever you want, tell whatever story you want to tell. And I think I'm in the first issue with Josh Cassara, who's drawing X-Force right now and is so amazing on art. And we did a 10-page story that's sort of a 70s 80s Cold War spy thing with Nick Fury as a guest in it. And it's sort of my Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy with Wolverine. But the issue's awesome, and it's got Jerry Duggan and Adam Kubert did a story, and Declan Shalvey wrote and drew a story. And it's the kind of thing that I feel like comics doesn't do enough of anymore, which is like the just really satisfying short anthology pieces that are, like I love that stuff. That was a big gateway for me in comics. You don't need to like be super invested in the world. You just get a bite-sized taste, and it's built to be satisfying in that way. And so that's awesome and really fun. And even if you don't like my writing, it's worth the price of admission just for Josh's art is so good. So I'm really excited about that, and I think it's out next month.
I don't think I've ever seen someone make an appeal to, maybe you don't like me, but here are the reasons you should buy this anyway. I like it.
I like to cover my bases. Josh is really good, and people should appreciate him, regardless of their feelings on me. Yeah.
I would love to hear a little bit about folks' collaboration experiences in Marvel. For instance, Becky, you wrote 3 volumes of The Punisher, and you had some pretty wonderful folks on that journey with you. I know you've probably spoken to this a lot before, but I would hate myself if I didn't ask, what was it like to work with Steve Dillon on that?
I was so nervous when Jake Thomas, who was editing it, was like, we're going to get Steve Dillon to do this. We're going to ask him. And I was like, yeah, good luck. That's never going to work with me. And then they're like, we got him. And I was like, oh my God. Like I was so nervous and such a big fan. And obviously I grew up, like I read Preacher like way before I probably should have. And I just loved his art, and I was very familiar with it, so it was easy to write for him because he has such I mean, he does the violence, of course, like so well, and he draws like the perfect Frank Castle. And it's everyone, of course, when you think of Frank Castle, you think of like Garth Ennis's Frank. So it was obviously like a huge honor to work with him, and he does such his comics are surprisingly funny. Like it's such a dark humor, and the way he paces the stories out. So it was easy to like write a script and really envision how he would translate it. So working with him was very easy, and it was a lot of fun. And Jake was a great editor on that. Yeah. And then Chris Anka came in and did a one shot, and then Matt Horak came in and finished up the rest of the run, which I was like, I could never come in after Steve Dillon. Like, props to Matt Horak. He did a great job, and he filled some very big shoes that I would have been too nervous to myself. And I made him draw Bear Trap a lot. So that was, I'm sorry, Matt, if you're watching this. But I will always be sorry for that.
The bear trap on the chain is like one of my favorite Punisher moments ever. It's so good.
I know. I kept joking. I was like, I'm going to take away his guns, and then I did.
Was there anything that you feel like you didn't get to say in that run, or that you'd want to go back for, or does it feel like you kind of got your vision of it out there?
I did. Everything that I pitched, like the whole story, that was it. I wanted to end it kind of like Frankenstein, you know, when they were kind of off in the Arctic, like
drifting.
And the whole idea was we were bringing Frank back, I guess, and I wanted to do kind of like a rebirth where he was started in New York and then had to leave, lost all his gear, all his guns, his van, like everything, and then he supposedly dies and then gets resurrected and then like comes back again. By the end, it's like not a new Frank, but the idea of, you know, kind of coming from full circle and like rediscovering who you are, even though who you are was always who you knew that you were. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
That's kind of what I was going for, I think.
I am curious, Matt, when you were working on The Punisher, you mentioned earlier that you've had a shifting perspective on him over time. How did that play into taking that on?
Yeah, well, I followed directly after Becky, which was for me very intimidating and very big shoes to fill. And no, I was really nervous. I really loved that run, and but yeah, the Punisher is weird because I you know, I was a little kid growing up in New York, and you know, it was when you're a little kid and you get mugged, like the idea of the Punisher seems really cool. You're like, oh, there's a guy out there who will stop muggers, or what, you know, whatever it is. Like he's a very like simple idea if you're a child, I think, to latch onto. And then as I got a little older, I was like, oh, this is really horrifying. Like this character is really upsetting, really unnerving, and I sort of like really kind of distanced myself from him and my love of him, and then years later, I started picking up Garth Ennis's run because I'm a huge Garth Ennis fan, and Steve Dillon, obviously. And they just recontextualized him, the Punisher, in such a smart way of just being like, he's a monster. These are monster stories. Like, this is not a celebration. This is not a superhero. Like, this is a monster for bad guys, but it's still a monster. And that, to me, was something that I really was like, that, you know, if I take the book, I told Jake Thomas, editor, who's one of the best editors in comics, I was like, look, I'm pretty uncomfortable with the character in some ways. And he was like, yeah, lean into that. Why are you uncomfortable? Like, let's focus on that. And so that was a big thing for me, is like making sure that what's interesting for me is that like Steve Dillon sort of set him aside, and Ennis, like they put him sort of away from the Marvel Universe often, so there weren't always a lot of other Marvel characters. Like the Marvel Max book sort of is not in continuity. Maybe it is, like it's vague. But I was like, I want to go the opposite route. I want to have a lot of other Marvel heroes in the book to sort of be a moral compass. So it's never confusing that, like, you know, you can follow Frank Castle for a little bit and think he's a good guy, and then when Spider-Man and Captain America show up and be like, you have to stop. It's very clear in the Marvel Universe, like, this is not someone that we look up to. This is not someone that we admire. And so that was really important to me, and Marvel let me do that, and it was really fun. And you know, we have a ton of guest stars and guest appearances, and figuring out who ends up being okay with Frank and who doesn't was sort of a thing we built to over the 5 arcs of the book, and that was something I was really excited about. Yeah.
That's fantastic. And so you could highlight the way that that conflict throws him into perspective with the rest of the Marvel Universe while still having a fun, kick-ass Punisher book. Quite a magic trick, but congratulations, you did it. I'm curious, speaking of the ideas that are encoded into these things, Philip, in your Empire Captain America run, where you could have had just running around punching, attacking plants in the face, you opted to add some extra layers to what was going on there in terms of the wider ideas and the idea of service. And I was really curious how you came to that angle for your Empire Captain America story.
Well, part of that was actually planned by the powers that be. Like they had a very, like Empire, of course, is a big crossover event that they did and that we did, and there was a very specific place for Cap in all that. Where after the initial events, they all kind of split up, and Cap is meant to kind of unify the all military forces around the world to fight the Katati on as humans. While the Avengers and X-Men are doing their thing, he rallies the troops, the literal troops around the world to fight on their own. And I wanted to introduce a new villain, within that, because they can't take down, Cap's mini couldn't take down the big bad. But I introduced the kind of a high priest that is his troops worship him almost like their prophet, and as active duty serviceman myself, it was obviously a huge honor to write Cap. And when Cap is on screen, whenever he speaks, everyone listens, right? Like it's important that he kind of commands respect and attention from whoever he's talking to. And so when I was researching how to write Cap, I mean, he's not Superman. It's not the same. Cap is like the perfect soldier from generations past. So he is the perfect, like he was Superman in the 40s. But now when he talks, it should be a little bit dated in my opinion, and he should have this kind of old school gravitas that you hear when you hear an FDR speech, or even some of the things that Cronkite spoke. So that's kind of how I approach his dialogue. As far as the idea of service, that's just who Cap is. He embodies the Army values that we're all expected to uphold. So yeah, it was just a huge honor to write Cap. I mean, that's the only way that I would know to write Cap. Like that's who he is at its core. Like if every character has their own kind of mission statement, like Spider-Man, of course, is great power, great responsibility, and Batman is criminals are a superstitious, cowardly lot. With Cap, it's all about the idea of service. Like he was literally made to fight the Nazis. So that's how I approach Cap all the time.
Turns out that doesn't stop being relevant. So with that,
Nature's perfect villain.
Ed, I am curious, you have also inherited more or less a book. When you came into New Mutants from someone else on this panel, I love how much crossover there is. What was the most fun element of jumping into the Dawn of X situation? And what, if any, was an unexpected challenge?
I think the most fun is just that I think when Jonathan sort of set this up, really sort of blew like a lot of the rules out of the water. And so, we had sort of mutants out for self a little bit, and not, I think for me, the most exciting part was like them working alongside long-term villains and sort of how that works, how each character sort of responds to that, how they go on living with that, knowing that they're eating supper with someone who tried to kill them 78 different times over the past.
An interesting question, yeah.
I think the biggest challenge was actually Jonathan and I were trading it off for a bit, and I actually couldn't use any of the core New Mutants characters, so I had to come up with sort of a B squad using a mixture of sort of the Grant Morrison era New X-Men and a couple of the Gen X kids as well. And so that was, for me, it felt like a natural progression to New Mutants. I feel like it's weird that we have a team called the New Mutants that's been around for nearly 40 years. That they're not new anymore. And I like the idea of trying to progress the team forward a little bit and mixing it up with new characters and trying to push a lot of the younger characters forward and give them more prominence, because I find a lot of them are stuck in this weird, like they're never going to graduate school. They're stuck in school forever. Because they never get to graduate up like was the initial promise, I think, when these characters came out. So I think the big challenge was trying to like push these characters, like taking characters like Armor and Glob and such, and trying to push them forward and trying to put them closer to leadership roles, I think, and make them feel like they are closer to being X-Men and closer to being more prominent characters. Does that make sense? I feel like I'm talking in circles, but
No, absolutely.
yeah. But that was a big thing, is just try and give these characters more importance within the I guess on the island of Krakoa and within the Marvel universe.
It makes total sense, because those are characters defined by a sort of permanent adolescence, and it's both the thing that we love about them, but I can't imagine how challenging that. How do y'all deal with the fact that we as the fans will riot if anything changes, but will stop reading if nothing changes? Like, how does that work?
You just
Anyone
don't go.
that one.
You just don't go on Twitter.
Yeah.
Does anyone have any expert tips on balancing that surprise us but satisfy us challenge that we, the unreasonable fans of the world, demand?
That's a great question. I mean, monthly comics are all about. I think I heard Shaken's talk. I think Shaken talked about the illusion of change and how you want everything to feel like it's moving forward and changing, but in the end, Steve Rogers is ultimately Captain America, and he has to always be that, or has to, even if he's not for a while. That's who he is.
You know that people are going to expect that, and that's in the atmosphere, and etc.
Yeah, like, not to say that nothing can ever change. I mean, Brubaker did it beautifully with Bucky. I mean, like, Bucky was always going to be. One time, Bucky was one of those guys that you can't ever bring back, because everyone knew that Bucky was this teenager who died.
I'll confess, I was one of those people who thought that was a terrible idea, and then was completely wrong. Turns out
it turned out so great. I really loved it. I mean, at first it was like, give me a break, but it was very quickly turned it around and made it this amazing thing. And now that's like one of my favorite characters. So yeah, I mean, there are things that there are times when you can change the status quo, and you treasure those moments. But yeah, it's tricky, man, because you have to let the character develop. There has to be arcs. You have to have a character start in one place and end in another place within the framework of who that character is and always has been. So it's a tricky thing.
Matt, I think I heard you had some thoughts on this one.
Yeah, I was just, I think a big thing that it took me a little while to realize when I started working at Marvel, is just how sort of unbreakable these characters are. Like, most of the characters we work with were popular before we were born, will be popular after we're dead. And like, you do something and you get people being like, oh, you ruined this character. And you're like, no, they'll still be a super popular entity when 85 years from now. Like, there's nothing we can do to ruin these characters. There's nothing we can do to break them. And with that said, like, I think the onus is on us to sort of like push and pull and tear at them and test them. Like, I think that's a big thing that, I think some fans, there's different types of stories and different types of books, and I appreciate them all. But for me, I sort of love the Marvel heroes who are put to the test all the time. The Wolverines who get knocked down and they're always going to get back up. But like, you just want to see the knockdown be something that you're like, how are they going to get up from this? How is Captain America going to pick up the shield again? How is, you know, Frank Castle going to keep going? You know, how is Peter Parker going to lift that weight? You know, whoever it is, like that, they have these moments of just testing them. And I think that's sort of our job, is to be like, what are the limits of these tests we can put them through? Like, we have to put these characters to the ringer, because the real story and the real meat of why we love them is because no matter what we do to them, they come out on the other side okay, and they'll always be okay. And so the story comes from the knockdown, because the get up is inevitable, and that's something that I think a lot of fans have a hard time with. But then at the end, they like it. I think, you know, Ed made the joke about, you know, stay off Twitter, but it's funny to watch when you do something, when you have a story that's really rough on a character, to watch fans be like upset, and then when the character pulls out in the end, talk about how much it means to them that they survived and they're okay. And it's like, well, that's the journey. Like, the roller coaster has the dips and the going back up, and we have to have both. And like, yeah, the dip is really hard, but that's why the going back up is fun.
Absolutely.
I'm not a big roller coaster fan, so I don't know if that really makes sense. But
that resilience that we see in those characters is a lot of what we're as fans drawing out of these books, I think. I would love to hear any more thoughts on this, but I want to let chat know, please make sure to be asking your questions, because we are about ready for me to stop monopolizing all of you and find out what people would like to know from our incredible panel. Any final thoughts on the balance of Tevye, first question already. Question. I am just wondering, what is your favorite event and least favorite event you guys read or wrote from Marvel or DC Comics? It's a big question. So address whichever portion of that you would like. If you have a favorite event or something that stands out to you as maybe not your favorite that you dealt with. Anybody?
You know, favorite event was before I worked at Marvel, but for me, like it is sort of a cop-out answer, but the run of like Civil War to Secret Invasion and Dark Reign, like that, the way those stories flow together and actually like impact all the titles in the line, you feel like you read something, and you know, a lot of times in an event, well, you know, the Marvel and DC and everyone says like, this is big and earth-shaking, and then, you know, at the end of the day, maybe it's not. I mean, it's big at the time, and then it doesn't have an impact. And those were books that really you felt the impact going forward consistently. And I really, you know, was just so in love with like seeing how it worked and sort of studying like the ripple effects of all that. So that's a favorite of mine. And I'm going to pass on the least favorite event question.
Well, because most of you all know how hard that is, probably. So. Anybody else?
I remember I was living in Richmond at the time when like Avengers Disassembled came out, and I had kind of fallen off the monthly comic thing, and I was just mostly getting like reading manga and stuff. And when that came out, I used to go to Velocity Comics, and Pat, I think, recommended it to me, and I read it, and I was like, oh man, this is good. And then it just kind of like it just spiraled out, and I never was into Avengers like before that at all, and all of a sudden I was reading like a billion comics, like, you know, I got a pull list, and it was like the same thing where like House of M and Civil War, like all that stuff really got me reading the comics again, and it got me reading like all the side comics again, and you know, the Quicksilver miniseries that they did when he had to go like get the Terrigen Mist and stuff. I was like, why am I reading all this stuff, but I have to know? Like it was really cool to be like super excited about comics in a way that was like really current, because you know, the events like Dark Phoenix, I read it like way after it had come out. You know, so right. A lot of the classics that I love, I wasn't there for it as it was happening. But I feel like those really hit me at like the exact right time. It got me super stoked about comics again. And I mean, I was really stoked about it, but like reading it and being like invested as a reader and a fan. So yeah, same for me.
Absolutely. That's really the best case scenario for those. A fave from Ed or Philip?
I would say, I don't even know if you consider it an event, but the one that hit me first and biggest was Kraven's Last Hunt, Spider-Man series from the 80s that I was reading as it was coming out. And I was so hooked on that. I remember halfway through it, we went on a camping trip for about a week, and I harassed my mother into driving an hour away so I could get the latest issue so I wouldn't miss out on a week. You know, being the terrible child that I was, but Craven's Last Hunt really sort of as I can't remember how old I was when it was coming out. I want to say about 12 or 13. It really messed me up. It really it was a lot of stuff that I didn't at that point didn't realize you could do in comics. I was a big horror film fan already, so this is a thing that sort of crossed over into that for me. And the ending of that was just so dark, and it just lasted for so long. It made such a huge impression. I think really colored the sort of stuff I became interested in afterwards, and really the style of writing that I even do today. But more recently, I would, as much as I hate to agree with Matt, I think that Civil War was really brought me back in, and I thought it really presented a lot of more really interesting moral quandaries between characters that at that point had been best buddies and now turned against each other, and I think it really was great at showing who each character was and what they really stood for and what they really believed, and how when those things are at odds, it is sometimes you can't reconcile those odds. And I think that, and the way that it spilled out, I thought was incredible. I thought it was a great event.
Something that sticks with you. And Philip, sorry I left you for last.
No, it's cool. So back in the day when I was reading in high school, I was reading a lot of Joe Mad X-Men. I was kind of at that time, and the events back then were the Phalanx Saga, which I thought was awesome, and that's what first kind of got me really hooked on X-Men. And then,
man, I feel like you and me and nobody else, but
yeah,
that was
hey,
absolutely.
I stand by it. Yeah, I really liked Phalanx Saga. I really liked the Age of Apocalypse, though. Was even better, and I loved how you got to see all these familiar takes. Oh, excuse me, familiar characters and completely new takes on everything, and just see the same, all the same action figures in a completely different sandbox. It was just incredible how they did that. More recently, honestly, I got to jump in with everyone else and say that whole Avengers run started out with Disassembled and House of M, and the New Avengers run that kind of became the tentpole that all these other things came out of, including Civil War and Secret Invasion and Dark Reign. That was all just an incredible thing. The way they all kind of flowed together was just perfectly done. And especially with Civil War, well, and the other ones too that I just mentioned, the stakes for all those characters seemed so real, and it affected the status quo, and it was just a masterclass in how to do an event. Oh, we lost Amy.
Well, we're hostless.
Oh no! What are we gonna do?
This is it, guys. We got it now. Oh,
There she is.
I don't know where I went. I'm terribly sorry, but I've come back with hopefully the next question for our panel, which I think was about how you each got into the industry. I did eat up a lot of our panel time with all my questions. Sorry about that, guys. But Spooky Ghost wants to know, when and how did you guys get into the industry, if there is a bite-sized version of that? Philip, you want to go first on this one?
Yeah, sure. I'll try to keep this concise. But I was already, my day job, quote unquote, is to play music with a military band, and I'm in the DC
so
area
cool.
doing that. Thanks. That's the job. And my brother was an illustrator and wanted to get into comics, as I had once wanted to do. And he's an artist. He didn't know how to get started, and so I was like, well, I'll just start writing scripts for you to draw, and we'll kind of educate ourselves on how comics work and how, what a script looks like, and go to conventions together and figure it out. And it was a good excuse for me to get back into comics again, because I always loved them. And I just completely got the bug. Like, after jumping back in, I hadn't read comics in a while. I'm getting back into them and seeing how far the state of the art had come, which is just really intoxicating. So I wrote some stories for my brother to draw, and since then, I've just, he started getting busy, and I started looking for other artists to work with, and eventually that turned into Last Sons of America that got picked up by Boom Studios, and from there got noticed by DC and then Marvel, and it's kind of all worked out.
And off to the races. Excellent. Sorry, I think I cut Matt off as you were jumping in on that one too.
Yeah, I was just I've been a comics fan my whole life, and I worked in the music business for a while, and sort of got really burned out on that, and was like, well, what else do I like to do? And I was like, I guess I just want to make comics, and I didn't know anything about it, and so I just sort of jumped in and tried to figure it out, and I was finding artists and making web comics and like trying to self-publish stuff, and finding people working pros on my, who were coming up, who I could like just bug and ask for questions. Ed was a big one. I've known Ed for a really long time because I was a big fan of Murder Book and Comeback and stuff he was doing, and was always just bugging him for advice. And he was super helpful. But but there's a ton of like upcoming pros like who you just meet online, and we were all just like encouraging each other. And I know like Frank Barberi and Mike Morisi and Steve Orlando and Vita Ayala, and all of us were just sort of always like out there trying to make sure that we didn't quit. And so that's, you stick around long enough and you get to do it, I guess.
I think finding the right team is a wonderful lesson to take from in terms of getting into, let's say, superhero comics. Ed, you want to go next?
Yeah, I'll try and keep it as quick as possible. But I wanted to be a comic book artist. After high school, I went to fine arts to better hone my skills. But this was sort of pre-internet time. I didn't know any writers. I met one writer through a local comic shop, and the guy was an absolute jerk, and he wasn't very talented. And he had this idea that I was just I would push the pencil around paper, and he was, and just realized his grand ideas for him that were terrible. And so I realized that, like, at that point, I'd just start writing for myself rather than working with this dude. And so I just started writing back in like 1994. I started writing and drawing and self-publishing comics, and I did that from 94 till 2010. And then in 2010, I realized I really disliked drawing, even though I spent so long doing it, had gone through fine arts and all that sort of jazz. It just, I found that when I was drawing in my head, I was writing, 5-6 issues ahead of what I was drawing. And I realized I just enjoyed the process of writing a lot more. So in 2010, I just quit drawing and focused on writing, and launched Murder Book, which is a very short series of crime stories. And just worked with other artists that I was lucky enough to have met over the years of self-publishing. And it wasn't until I did that I stopped drawing, focused on writing, that I started to get some attention. So I did Murder Book, which got collected by Dark Horse, which then got me some work over at DC, and is what ended up getting me work over at Marvel as well. But it was very long process.
Well, someone I hope is not tired of drawing, because I'll be very sad if you don't keep doing both. But Becky, how did you get into comics?
I was an animation school dropout, and I started self-publishing mini comics, and was going to conventions and meeting people, other people who were self-publishing. And then just did a bunch of small press work until Shelley Bond contacted me from Vertigo, and that's when I drew American Virgin with Steven Seagal. And that kind of put me, like, I guess, on the map, and that was the first job that really paid me enough to live off of, so I can quit all of my advertising work and storyboarding work and just focus on comics, which was great. And then I got really burnt out drawing, though, because I was like, I want to write too. And drawing is like, takes you, like, if you're drawing a monthly book, you have no time for anything else. The schedule's so, it's crazy. And it's an endurance test. So I kind of switched over to writing more, started doing that. And then, now I'm kind of getting back into drawing more, but I think I'm only going to draw what I write. So that's my new mantra.
Ooh, and this is great news for anyone who's read Becky's other work, like Demeter and the entire By Chance or Providence run. This is always very good news. Do we have? But the things you're indulging in are the things we're showing up to see. It's monsters and blood and all the good stuff.
Yeah, exciting.
Ed says, Q, are you all producing books via actual Marvel method plot style these days, or are you more full script oriented?
I always prefer to write a whole script, but it really is all about the artist, like what they want to see, you know? So if I always have a little conversation with the artist before the book starts to see what they prefer. And it's not just a question of like this way or this way. It's like, how much detail do you like to see? How much direction do you want to see? I almost always give way less direction in an action scene than I do in a dialogue. Like if there's a conversation happening where the beats that they're speaking really matter, I'll script that all out pretty carefully. Like assuming that I'm able to do whatever I want and that the artist does not have very, very specific wants and needs, I'll script out the dialogue pretty carefully. But then the action scenes, I feel like a jerk choreographing all that, where the artist is really better equipped to do that kind of thing. So if there's anything, I'll just say something like, you know, like more like kind of paragraph style. Like if there's a 2-page, I like to write like join pages together in a script. So I'll say pages 4 or 5 if it's an action thing. So I let them decide where the page break happens, or if it's going to go all the way across the center line. Leave the layout completely up to them. And I might say something like in the last beat, like the last beat on these pages has to be like a cliffhanger because dude man's going to get killed after the page turn or whatever. So I try not to get too involved in the action unless they want more direction. And of course I'm happy to do that. But it really, I mean, to sum it all up, it really is all about the artist.
Absolutely. Thank you all so much for
Oh no,
your
I'm sorry.
time.
I took that whole,
No, it was me. I was greedy. Thank you all so much for this wonderful panel. I am curious. Last question. Show of hands. Has anyone done the old school Marvel method?
I
Really?
do it for myself, I guess,
Oh,
but not for
You're
others.
your own Jack Kirby. Thank you all so much. Briefly, where can people follow your work or get the updates on all of the various good stuff that you all have going on? And thank you so much for being with us today. Matt?
Yeah, I have all the social media things, but the only one I really ever use is Twitter. So I'm on Twitter at Ashcan Press, ASHCANPRESS.
Excellent. Philip?
I'm on Facebook on my full name, Twitter at Philip K. Johnson, 2 L's in Philip, and Instagram is Philip_Kennedy_Johnson. And my website, philipkennedyjohnson.com. Sorry.
Excellent. No worries. What's the best way to find out about those mysteries you were teasing?
I'm on Twitter at Ed Brisson. But if you subscribe to my newsletter, which is on my website, edbrisson.com, I'm actually sending out Murder Book comics every week to subscribers right now. So that's where they can check them out.
Fantastic. And Becky?
I'm at Becky Clunan on Twitter and Instagram. And you can get me and my partner, Michael Conrad's self-published work at mysteryschool.bigcartel.com. And we have a newsletter too. So
Woo-woo.
we don't really use it. So
Thank you all so much. I'm Amy Dallin, and this has been such a blast. Happy Baltimore Comic Con.
You too, Amy. Thanks.
thank you.
You can get more Amy a little bit later on. We still have 5 more hours of Baltimore Comic Con, guys. This has been an absolute treat. Thank you all for being here for the Marvel panel. And Amy, you're not done yet. So, guys, we'll see you a little bit later on today.
Thanks, Chuck.
See ya.
Thanks.